Wanted to talk about standard operating procedures today. So I hope you've got your questions ready. I've even received a couple in advance, which is great. But before we get started, I'd just like to give a warm welcome to all of our new members joining us today, or everyone who is coming into the clinic for the very first time. A very big welcome to you. For all the seasoned pros of clinics, you know what to do throughout the clinic. Ask as many questions as you possibly can. We'd rather hear from you than talk the entire time. But before we get started, just so I know that everyone knows how to use the chat bar, because that's where we'd like you to ask questions. Tell us where you're chiming into the clinic from today. What city are you in? And how's the weather looking there today? Maybe you can kick us off. How's things in Ballarat today?
Ballarat's overcast. Yeah.
Overcast.
To be expected, Brenton. Yeah.
Oh, who we got here? We've got someone from, oh, it's disappeared, I couldn't say. A lot of Aussies, of course. We've got a few from America. Hello from Baltimore, Jonathan, good to see you. From Melbourne, sunny Sydney. All right, you guys know how to use the chat. Let's get rolling. Jamie, really good topic to talk about. One of your favorite topics to talk about, standard operating procedures. Now, I'd like to get into some of the nitty gritty of it and how to really build a good platform of standard operating procedures in a practice today. But I wouldn't mind starting with a little bit of context to the conversation of building an extraordinary business, building a practice that runs without you. Where does this topic of standard operating procedures, who is that eating that nice ice cream there? I've just spotted you. Looks good. Jamie, building standard operating procedures is part of building extraordinary systems, but tell us the importance of this as a piece of the puzzle to having the practice run without you.
Yeah, it's really critical, Brenton. It's critical to get scalability and to get leverage. Back in the early days when I started, I used to type up, how to do this, how to do that. And that was sort of the basic thing, step 1, step 2, step 3. And I'm sort of going back, about 16 years now. And so much has changed in that time. But essentially, what we're talking about is getting scalability and getting leverage, because the worst thing you can do is have all the knowledge of how to run your firm, in your head. And the question comes down to, well, how do I get all that knowledge out of my head so that other people can do their job successfully, and do their job successfully without referring back to you all the time, without referring back to you as the owner all the time. And it's a massive topic, even when you're on the internet, and whether you're on Google or Facebook, whatever, there's a lot of ads come up about this, about, trying to scale your business with systems. There's products called Training. There's all different sorts of things out there that you can use to get the knowledge out of your head so that other people can do their job successfully. Yeah.
So how important has this been for you at Sky? And tell us a little bit about the journey that you've gone on to focus on this, because I know this is something that you've really put a lot of emphasis on, and as a result, everyone in Wize has benefited because they're getting a lot of the standard operating procedures that you've created over the last couple of years. But tell us about how this has evolved in Sky. Like, where did you start on the journey of starting to document everything? what did that look like, and what does it look like now?
Yeah, look, to probably step back even further and to give it context, it was about our business model. You know, it was about right from the word go, when we got a new client or when we got a new lead, how did we deal with that lead? How do we deal with that client? And what's the system and what's the process? So it goes right back to your actual business model, and then progressing through the steps of winning, winning a lead or a prospect and turning them into a client, how you onboard them, what's the onboarding process, and then working out what services you have to provide, that new client, and then, all the way down to how to roll out, how to deliver that service. And so essentially that came down to what I call, our guarantee. Um, and our guarantee sort of has, around 7 steps, and one of those steps, without going into it, is, ideally we want a client who's on the cloud, in the cloud. And then, and I can sort of refer probably to the Wize Vault, Brenton, around step 6 of the Wize Vault, which is all about systems and processes. And so if you refer to step 6, it really, particularly for, a taxation public practice accountant, the steps in there are fundamental steps, I think, with how to deliver the services and how to keep your firm highly organized and highly systematized, down to, scheduling the work, collecting the information up front, communicating with your clients how your pricing model works. So from a larger extent, it's those fundamental steps and the business model of how you deliver your services. Then at a more detailed level, it's about, how do we deliver the bookkeeping, for example? How is a bank rec done? How do we conduct a tax planning meeting? And so, in my travels that I've seen, and I've been in this position myself where I had a lot of documents. I had a lot of, Word documents, Excel documents that weren't organized. So they were all over the place. And so in my travels, I find a lot of that with firms as well. They'll have a lot of policies and procedures, but no one will be able to find them, and they won't be organised in a way that it's easy to find them, Brenton.
Yeah. So it's making the platform and that depository in a way that it becomes part of the fabric of the practice, I guess.
Yeah.
Which you did a very good way with the Wize Hub, which we'll touch on soon.
And
yeah, you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and technology is a massive part of it. And I think, we all started with, back 20, 30 years ago, we all started with websites, and then, we had this thing called the internet. And then over the years, we morphed to what we call an intranet, and, an intranet, quite some years ago now, became a real central part of how I ran my own practice at Sky, and the intranet became a central depository of how we do things, of how we conduct all the steps that we needed to run the business. But so yeah, it's centralized on an intranet, and then organizing all the SOP, standard operating procedures, of how we do things. So, and just probably finally, Brenton, the thing to say is that, Ed always used to say to me, where there's not a policy, where there's not a procedure, it creates a vacuum. Mm-hmm. And what we mean by that is, if there's a vacuum there, well, the question is, well, what fills that space? And often it could be anything. It could be the way the clients want to do that particular task or that issue. It could be way the team members want to do it, or someone else. So you'll find that, anywhere where you don't have a policy or procedure, it creates a vacuum. And the problem with that is, it's not designed properly. Anything sort of goes in that space. So the more policies and procedures that you can do, the greater the leadership is. That's how we do things here, and this is why we're doing them. And watch this video. This is how we do it. So it's about leadership as well.
I love that because, and when Ed started talking about creating the vacuum, it makes so much sense because, and it's an added incentive to actually build this into the culture of the business because the less unknowing on certain things there is, then it just creates a much more well-oiled machine. You know, even down to the small things like, you know, how the business cards look, and I know you've got your own business card policy as
Mm,
well. So rather than having to ask, you know, 20 questions each time a business card needs to be made,
mm,
you can revert to that procedure, which is perfect. So
exactly.
there's no task, big or small, that doesn't evade sort of having being documented in the practice, which is great. But coming back to building that into the culture, how have you guys tried successfully ingrain this in Sky, where the team takes responsibility for also creating those standard operating procedures? Is that the case, or are there certain people who are authorized to create a procedure? How have you guys determined that?
Across the board. So we sort of have the freedom for anyone to create a policy and then just have it checked off, you know, by senior management. And that just gives you leverage. I think, you know, the most important video that you have for a start is how to create a video and how to put it on the intranet. And
We've got a video on how to create a video, so we'll send it.
yeah,
So make sure everyone.
that's it. So essentially, your most important video is a video or a policy or a procedure on how to create a video and then post it, you know, on your intranet where everyone can find it. And you know, then at Brenton, it comes down to creating new habits from the firm, and it's got to start from the top. It's got to start with the owners of the firm to say, look, hey Joe, can you teach such and such how to do this particular task? But while you do that, can you video it? So you've sort of got to get over yourself, and everyone has to get over themselves in terms of, you know, their voice being on a video, or whether they got you know, the live video working as well. And then, for example, if you've got a new, you know, you're onboarding a new employee and you've got a new system or a process that, or a new piece of software that you haven't used, it's important that in that hour's worth of training that you just hit the record button, Brenton. You just like hit, you know, use and come down the practicalities of it is, you know, you can use Loom or you can use Snagit, these particular tools, and just do the video on the spot. You know, like it doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of people think, you know, I look silly, I sound silly, you know, on my screen or whatever. Too many people get paralysis by analysis, and they aim for perfection with the videos, and you'll
To the
note
point
it.
where they don't even get started, Jamie. And
They don't even get,
I
yeah,
think this is one of the biggest issues is we're kind of in our own way when creating a really robust standard operating procedure library because we're concerned or fearful of those things. Now, with technology these days, and you're going to show us how easy it is now to actually create these things, but there's just no excuse to not have them documented now because technology just makes it so easy.
yeah.
Most
Like,
of the tech is free, which we'll get into some of the
yeah.
tools.
I mean, for example, I was talking to a US firm owner a few weeks ago, and he just onboarded their first offshore employee, and he said that, you know, I did an hour's session showing them, you know, the US tax returns and all that sort of thing. And the first question I said, "Oh, did you video that?" You know, and he goes, "Oh, damn, I forgot to do that." You know, but that's where the gold is. The gold is in our own backyard. That hour session that he had, showing the person how to do the different US tax returns, you know, that's where the gold is, and that's what you can leverage off. The beauty of videos is you can fast forward them, you can rewind them, you can pause them, and they're just gold. They're just gold. And the more that you can do that, the more you can create a culture where people say, hey, you know, we should have a video for this, the better. And then, you know, just have a process of it getting approved and signed off on, and away you go. And then before long, you'll create a whole vault of videos, and standard operating procedures of how to do a bit, how to do every task literally in your firm. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, in my financial planning business, we even had a documented checklist and policy on how to make clients coffee.
Yeah.
And you'd think you wouldn't have something for those little things, but it just took questions out. It took time off our plate and put it back onto the team.
Exactly.